Um, okay. So yeah, as I was saying, like our understanding of the human brain is extremely limited. Like we don't have a clear idea, as an example, how little we know. We don't have a clear idea of where memory is stored in our brain. All we know is that there are neurons, they're connected to each other, they're firing. We have some sense of how the different parts of the brain are divided up, but um, we are far, far away from like having any proper understanding of the human brain. And which is what makes all of these claims about artificial intelligence just taking over the world and like exceeding human intelligence so like disingenuous, because like we hardly understand what we're packing ourselves. But this is kind of for now what is the latest understanding of how the human brain works and processes things. So the human brain is essentially a sensory perception engine. um, what it does is it takes sensory input from the outside world and then stores it, or first processes it and stores it in the brain. Now, each one of these senses are processed at different places. So as an example, if this is kind of like a side view of the brain, this top portion that you see here is called, so essentially the brain is divided into three parts. It's the top part is the cerebrum, which is the latest, the most evolutionary latest thing that we have. Then you have the cerebellum, which is evolutionary quite old. It's where it's a seat of emotions and like motor control and all of that. And then below that is the brainstem. The brainstem is what allows the brain to connect and control all the different parts of your body. So like the muscles and like the sensory input of the world and everything that is like connected to the brainstem. Um, what this kind of division in the brain also means is that different senses are processed in different places. And when a sense is processed in a particular place, it is stored right next to it, to make it easy to kind of retrieve it. So as an example, when you look at the world, you get a sensory input from your eyes, and then the neurons that fire from your eyes slowly make it their way back towards the back of your brain. So this part that we have here is called the occipital lobe. This is where all of our visual systems are processed. So when you hear about computer vision and how like autonomous cars are driving, they're essentially mimicking how human brains perceive visual input. So when we look at things in the outside world, um, there's this, if you want I can go deeper into this, like, but I don't want to like nerd out too much. um, but the photon that hits our brain like leads to the neurons firing, which leads to a series of steps happening which are basically the processing of the image. The first thing that we do is we separate colors in the brain. The second thing we do is we start drawing edges, we start noticing the edges of things. And then once those edges are separate, then we start combining different edges into like a more cohesive picture. And then finally it goes into the back of the brain once it is kind of been differentiated into different um, objects. So like, for example, if I'm looking at something, I'm looking at the edges of that chair. So I know that when it goes to kind of my occipital lobe, which is at the back, that this is a chair that I'm dealing with. And then once it hits my visual, like occipital lobe, then you start making other associations about it, like higher level associations, like this chair reminds me of that chair. These two chairs are similar. They both serve the same function and all of those things. But it's a series of steps that the neurons take, like from where your brain kind of receives the input to like all the way at the back. And I was just telling this to Krishna and yesterday. The the length of the neurons. So like every neuron is connected to another neuron, and they're connected by these things called a dendrite. Sorry, axons. These axons, if you laid them out side by side, um, the length of all of them that just come from one human brain is 300 or like 180,000 miles. It's like 300,000 kilometers. So that means when an impulse actually like hits your eye and makes its way back to the brain, there is just incredible amount of processing happening. It's traveling the equivalent of like a cross-country trip from New York to San Francisco, which is just insane, the amount of processing that's happening there. So this was like a slide explanation, but all of these senses, kind of like the sensory, the visual, the language, the temperature, the smell, the taste, and all of these are stored in different parts of the human brain because they're processed there, they're stored there. So um, two centers that I want to call out specifically are the Broca's area up, which is this green area, and the Wernicke in that's there in this yellow kind of system. So the Broca's area is how we produce language. It's the language production system. So when these kinds of things are affected, by the way, the only way that we understand how the human brain works, because we can't actually take a human being and like cut them up and like look at how things are working internally because they will die. So the only way that we advance our understanding of the human brain is by noticing when certain areas of the brain are faulty or there's like a problem there. So when the Broca's area is affected, people manifest difficulty producing language. They understand it fine. So when you like speak to them, they will get it. But when they want to say it back, because ultimately language is a string of phonemes kind of connected together into a word, they're not able to do that because there's extremely fine motor control between your tongue and like your larynx, and all of these are like working in really close harmony to kind of produce words like the way that I'm producing it right now. So when the Broca's area is affected, your ability to comprehend language stays intact, but your production is affected. The other one of this is the Wernicke system. So the Wernicke system is where all of our semantic knowledge is stored. So semantic is what a word is and what that word means. That's the meaning of the word semantic. So our knowledge of language is stored in the Wernicke's area. So if the Wernicke's area is affected, you might be able to speak, but you have no comprehension of what you're saying. Even if you've grown up in an English household, if somebody speaks to you in English, you might not be able to like understand it. You might be able to make out that these are words of the English language, but you will not be able to understand what those words mean. Similarly, there's like separate areas of the brain where the temperature information is stored. Another area where the temporal or the time-based information is stored. Another where touch-based information is stored. So just to kind of give you a sense of just how incredibly complicated all of these are, let me show you. So this is what is called as a connectome of the brain. This is a very, very basic, it's not even super deep. They use the flow of blood to see what parts of the brain are connected with what parts. So as you can see, the amount of connections is just insane. It's like one of the most incredible pictures, and it's even more incredible to think that each one of us is just like packing this in our like body, and then we get to do whatever we want with it. But this is the extremely complicated structure that we were looking at. This is the left hemisphere, this is the right hemisphere. It is connected to each other through the central, really thick layer of neurons called the corpus callosum. And that's what leads to both of them communicating. If you see a brain, I'm sure you must have noticed that there is the gray matter, which is the surface area, and then there's the white matter that is below it. So what the gray matter is the gray matter is all of the neurons. So they're packed really close to each other. The white matter is essentially all of these connections. All of these connections are connected to each other. So the white matter is kind of like the interstate of the brain, where like it's processed in one place and then transferred into another place to like do another level of processing before it is translated to another place to do another level of processing. It's honestly like awe-inspiring sometimes just to like see these kinds of, to see some of this and just to understand it even just a little bit more. Okay. So as we were talking about, like here, all of our different senses are stored in different places where they are processed. Now, a memory essentially is a collection of senses. So an association of senses is a memory. So as an example, when I think of the word coffee, um, my the memory of it recollects the sensory input of this object. So like I remember that it's hot, usually, not always, but like um, it's hot. It's usually in a cup. That cup can be of the form of a paper cup or like a mug. It also keeps me awake. I drink it like multiple times through the day. So these are all like the sensory inputs that arise from the memory of a coffee. Um, that's how kind of information is stored inside in our brains. All of these senses are stored in their individual places. They're collected into an association, and that association is the memory. And this is kind of how the brain also like there's like neuroscientific underpinning, as I like to say, because 90% of the neurons that we have in the brain are association neurons, whereas 10% of them are pyramid neurons, which do the actual processing. That means the number that do the processing is much smaller. The associations, which is like finding similarities or holding things together as a bunch, much like significantly more prevalent. Um, and what the human brain is it's an extremely efficient association mechanism. So it tries to make the fewest number of connections, but have the same amount of impact in terms of like the number of associations. So as an example, these three senses are then associated into this memory. These three senses into M2, these three into M3, these four into M4. Now, the brain notices that this S2 and S4 are connected together in two different scenarios. Both this memory connects to them as well as this memory connects to them. This is a simplified example, but when you scale this up into much larger number of items, then these two senses then, instead of being held separately, are then associated together. So the brain like connects both of them and then connects the other two directly to the association. And this is happening at every scale. I'm going to pause for a minute here just to make sure that you understood, and that I'm also like explaining it well enough so that you're able to understand.
Yeah, I get it. So just to kind of reiterate as well what you said. Um, so we basically take sensory input and then we consolidate that into memories. To drastically simplify what you said. And the strength, so to get this right, is the strength of the sensory association. Like, let's say if you have very strong, like, I'm just trying to figure out what makes a strong association.
So one second. So I haven't talked about the strength of an association yet.
Okay.
Okay, like, so what this is there's a bunch of associations that are memory associations. And what I'm saying is the brain wants to figure out the most efficient number of connections to make to still make all of those associations. So what that means is if there is a couple of associations that always occur in pairs, then what the brain does is it automatically connects both of them up because it notices that these are co-occurring many times. So instead of making that connection individually to each one of those again and again, they're just paired up into a single association. And all of the previous other ones that are connected to both of this just connect to that association. Does that make sense?
Completely. Maybe I'm just not understanding this right. So the frequency of associations help builds like more efficient neural pathways. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
It's like when we're walking, when we're running, like we're not born knowing how to walk and run, but think of it like a marionette. Okay, a marionette has like two legs, two hands, and a head, right? So imagine that there are three strings, or there are five strings connected to each of those parts, and then you can put your hand in and you can control the marionette using those five strings. But as you would expect, the movement is going to be quite shaky because there's just very few connections, right? You can increase the fidelity of how this marionette moves by increasing the number of strings that are coming out of it. So you could have like 100 strings coming out of it. So like 20 strings from each leg, 20 from each hand, and then 20 from the head. So like, because you have so many more strings to control, you will now be able to like make really fine grained movement in the mat, but you still have only five hands. So you're not going to be able to control 100 strings. So one way that the brain gets around this limitation is it starts bundling strings together that are constantly being utilized together. So like by bundling those strings together, you can still work it with only five fingers, but and get close to that level of fine grained control. But the way it does it is by creating like bundles of strings. Okay. Does that make sense? Like, please tell me if
Yes.
I'm like, if it's not making sense, because I also need to keep improving the way that I'm presenting this as well.
Really, the simplicity of it, I understand the analogy, but I'm trying to see how it applies to everything. Because if this is the creation of memories, like I'm just saying, okay, we can understand words like that, but then how does it apply to different experiences and really the full breadth of that's what I'm not getting, like the full breadth of this thing, because it seems huge, but the analogy is just a bit limited. That's the thing.
Okay, so let's look at how memory kind of happens. So long-term memory storage happens through a combination of short and long-term memory. So we have the five senses, which is the sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste that we receive from the universe that we live in. And these inputs are first transferred into the short-term store. Because if we remember everything that we see, it's just incredible amounts of memory that will be taken up. So instead of storing everything, what the brain does is it notices things that might be important and then transfers them into a short-term store. Now, the short-term store can, on an average, hold only 7 items. This is why like a lot of phone numbers are 7 numbers long. If you remove the first 3 numbers of the area code, after that, it's 7 digits long. So the reason is because the human brain, an average human brain, can chunk information into pieces of 7. So like 7 numbers, if I give you, you're able to like remember it somewhat well. Anything beyond that, like things start dropping off. But the way people who have really good memory or memory champions, what they do is they use each one of those 7 pieces more intelligently. So instead of remembering each one of those numbers as separate numbers, you could take 3 numbers and remember that together as like 113 instead of saying 113, 113, 217. So there's techniques to increase the number of things that each one of these slots hold, but ultimately, like our ability is in the short term, we are able to keep things in the short term store for about like 30 seconds to a minute, and and 7 items are in there. Now, the way we transfer from here to the long-term store is we look for patterns in that data that we know or remember from memory. So this is a function of all of the things that you already know. So when you look at something, you start noticing the similarities. Like this reminds me of this. This is like similar to that. And those are the things that are translated into the long-term store. The long-term store can stays on, as you would imagine, for much, much longer. So when you're reading an article, when you're consuming something, it first goes to the short-term store, and then from the short-term store, based on active uh, effort on that, it is then translated into the long-term store. Once it goes to the long-term store, it kind of becomes knowledge. Um, and each one of these are essentially associations. Um,
Good question.
there's mhm.
Is there a set of conditions for or things that affect the transfer from short-term to long-term memory?
Yeah, there's a few. One of them is repetition. So
Okay.
if you
Yeah.
start seeing the same things often constantly in the short-term store, then that is associated together and then transferred into the long-term store. That's why repetition is a good method of, or like a somewhat good method of translating to the long-term store, but it requires like time because you need to like see it that frequently to be able to translate to the long-term store. Another way is if you already have an understanding or a logic for something. So as an example, if you're a designer, you are
Mm.
able to notice color gradients and like pixels like just a lot better than an average person is able to. So if you look at a UI, you're immediately able to notice pixels that are off. And if they're off, and this is a product that you actually care about, you translate that into your long-term story. You really remember it. It's not just a momentary thing. So your ability also plays a role in this. But just as a ability for everybody, like frequency is something that helps. Okay. Um, so what are the types of long-term memory? Based on our current understanding, there's two broad divisions to our long-term memory. There is explicit memory and there is implicit memory. Explicit memory is all of the kinds of memory that are available consciously to us. So these are like things like facts, figures, and that is further divided into three types. But before I go into that, the other kind of long-term memory is an implicit memory. So this is also called procedural memory or skill memory. So your ability to write, for example, like you're not going to be able to explain to somebody how you write or walking or running or these kinds of things. Um, they're stored differently. How do we know this? Because certain types of brain injuries or when you have lesions in a certain part of the brain needs to be removed. We've noticed that people are not able to form new memories, but all of the skills that they're able to learn stay. This is actually like a very fundamental moment in the understanding of the human brain. There was this patient called HM who, due to some like really bad circumstances, both of his lobes in the brain needed to be removed because he was suffering from incredible epilepsy. So like he just could not live. So this was in the 1960s or 70s. So the doctors decided to take the drastic step of removing both lobes so that this person could at least live. What that did was this person lost all ability to make short-term memory or even long-term memory. So like from the moment of the surgery, they found that this person was able to remember their past information that they had formulated up until that point of time. But going forward, they were not able to remember anything. Like they would take 2 steps forward and then they would forget what they were thinking about before. And this is like a profound disability. Like this person just cannot function by themselves. um this is really like um both sad and interesting moment where an interviewer asks him, HM, how do you live your life, or like how do you decide what to do if you don't have any memory of anything? he says, well, I do what is good in the moment, or what is good, what is the good that I can do in the moment. That's the only way to live. And what they noticed about this person, this is actually like a few months later, is they were able to teach this person a skill. Specifically, the skill was how to draw in reverse or write in reverse. And it blew their mind that he was able to like learn this skill. This is something that all of us can learn with like a few attempts. But this person was not only able to learn it, but is able to reproduce it many times after. And when asked, how are you able to do it? He's just like, I just seem to know. This is super interesting. So that's why the procedural or the skill-based memory is stored in a different part of the brain compared to the explicit or the conscious kind of memory. The explicit memory is then divided into three types. One is the episodic, one is the semantic, and the other is autobiographical. Episodic and autobiographical memories are similar. They are representations of the universe. So like we remember episodes. And we're really good at remembering episodes because um, we are story machines. If anything is connected together in the form of a story, the pattern of a story, we remember that significantly better than as a bunch of disconnected facts. Episodic is if, for example, I think of Diana, I remember the last time we met, what we did when we met the last time. When I was leaving my previous leaving Zendra, we would like go on like really long walk meetings. Like these are episodic memories. Like I remember these episodes. Autobiographical memories is an episodic memory that is important to you and has left an impact on you. Semantic memory is what is really interesting for us. Semantic memory is the understanding of the word. It's what is stored kind of in the Wernicke's area. And the interesting thing about semantic memory is semantic memory has the widest coverage in the brain. So when you think of a word like a dog, there's multiple things that a dog reminds you of. And the semantic memory is how we are able to decipher or like tell ourselves what about this memory is particularly useful or interesting for me. And then we'll talk about semantic memory in just a bit, but the implicit and the explicit memory curiously come together to form emotional memory. So when you look at something and you feel happiness or sadness or like some form of like satisfaction or something like that, I like this is what the research says that it's a combination of explicit and implicit memories coming together. And emotions are stored further below in our brain. So like they come from a more ancient part of our evolution. So like that's why it's called the reptilian brain, because when our brain develops, when the baby is born, it's first the reptilian brain down here that develops, and then the brain then develops on top of that. So yeah, so then words. So if this is kind of like the Wernicke's area, this is what I mean by words having a wide coverage. The information is stored in this area as words, and words are stored in close proximity to words that are similar. So I was talking to Krishna about this yesterday, but I don't know whether you've experienced this. When you're trying to remember somebody's name, you cycle through a few names before you get to that person's name. That's because those words in your brain are proximally located. That means they're located very close to each other. So like trying to get to that one person, like you just like slip a little bit and get to the other one, and then you can like find your way to the right word. But where it is stored, it's each word. So like language is essentially an association of associations, like multiple associations like on top of each other. So each word is a collection of senses and sensory input and like other memories that it is connected to across the brain. It has the widest coverage amongst any of our memories, and it is in a sense um, connected together in the central area because they're so closely located and proximally located. They're kind of, there is a relationship amongst them. So, for example, the word father and the word fatherly and the word parent, not only are they closely located next to each other, but the word fatherly is connected to the word father in kind of like a graph format. Um, this is what we call a knowledge graph. Words inherit associations of the other words that they're already connected. And this knowledge graph that we want to build for our users at Sidebrain. Um, why is language kind of important in all of this? Well, few reasons. Still adding here, but one is language is a symbolic representation of neuronal firing patterns. Like until we can put deep brain electrodes and like figure out every single one of our neurons that are firing, which honestly is so far away, it's just not even funny. We have 86 billion neurons in our brain. 86 billion. That's but language is the closest thing we have that can communicate neuron firing patterns and the weights that we associate different things to the outside world. And the other reason is that language has access to almost all parts of the brain. So these associations that I keep talking about, the only way that we can know what these associations are, either through emotions or any of these other formats, is through language. So language has that power. And the more experience you have with language, the better you are able to reveal kind of like the associations behind different things. For a lot of people, you don't even think about these associations. You just like, oh, they just exist. But if you start digging a little deeper into your brain and like I'm trying to understand what are the associations, you actually don't just understand about how these associations work, but that power translates to everything. Like difficult emotions that you hold on to are because of a series of emotion, like series of associations that are kind of like making it a really tightly held association. So by understanding or getting better at deconstructing an association, you are able to like know yourself better and like what makes you you. Um, so the anatomy of a thought, I'm still adding to this, but if this is the universe, you kind of get a sense of input of the universe through these five senses: sight, sound, smell, touch, taste. These are the only things that we know about the outside world. And then we also have like a really good sense of our body. It's these five senses plus our body that makes up all of our perception. These are then passed into both the cognitive and the emotional systems. The cognitive systems is the ones that make associations across ideas. So like this reminds me of, this thing that I'm looking at is similar to, this idea is analogous to. So these things come from the cognitive part of the brain, whereas the emotional part of the brain is more like associated with like, I feel happy when I see this. This makes me sad. Oh, this, I find this really funny. So these are the emotional aspects. There's like really interesting ways that both of them work together. For example, like this song makes me sad because it reminds me of um, this person that I used to date in the past, as an example. Um, so these are, in a sense, what lead to both a sensory association and natural language description of the associations. I'm going to like spend a little bit more time like cleaning this up a little bit better, but a natural language description of associations is all of the things that what you're reading, what you're consuming, what you're being shared with, like what does that remind you of? And if you're able to translate, if you're able to get these associations, then you can start using that to create a knowledge graph for the user. And then this is the last part. I'm still kind of adding, um, I will add this, I'll explain this a little bit better the next time, but I like the analogy, like a digestive system analogy for side brain, where there's like four parts. There's ingestion, where you are taking an idea that exists out in the universe or content or something, and you're adding it into your site. So that's the part of ingestion. Um, Digestion is when you take that food particle or that content and you're breaking it down into its subcomponents, like who is the author, when was this posted, what is the publisher, like the YouTube, New York Times, all of those things. And then absorption is once you've been broken down, um, um, it's then like absorbed in all of the right places, so that it kind of, the idea here is that absorption is where not only does it form itself into a knowledge graph, but then you start actually using it. Like, how do you make it work for you? And then excretion is also an important part, because a lot of times, like, language is very powerful also in a negative way. So like some of the words that are in there may not be useful at all. So like you need to get rid of those. Some of the words may hold a lot of negative meaning, and those also need to be like removed from the system. So I'm going to add more to this analogy, but this is what I have right now. Let me show you what a knowledge graph looks like. So when I say a knowledge graph, this is in a sense what a knowledge graph is. So like, so Mona Lisa is painted by Da Vinci. Da Vinci is a person. This person is also a person. Um, and yeah, this is fairly self-explanatory. But it's also extremely hard for a system, for a computer system to be able to do that. But this is what we want to do for every person, because every person's knowledge graph is going to be very unique to them, different from all the others. And when you're able to create a knowledge graph, you're literally able to understand how this person thinks, and then you create what is essentially a self-organizing memory model for everything. So with that, I will stop. I want you to give me feedback about what worked, what did not work, what made sense, what did not make sense. Was this helpful to you? And like, be honest, like this is like great information and general knowledge, but it didn't really help me. That's also like feedback. So yeah, it's for a really long time.
I think I followed pretty well. I am curious about Krishna's original or first question about the capacity. So is that right? The capacity to store memory? Is that?
Was it the conditions for long-term transfer of memory storage?
No, it's okay.
Or
I thought it was something about like storage. Yeah, maybe it was about that. Okay, never mind.
those are the strong associations, how we build those?
Yes, that might have been
Yeah.
it, but I think that was actually answered now that
Mhm.
I'm hearing it again. I think it's really good in terms of understanding, having like it'd be a really in-depth understanding of what Sidebrain is trying to do. I think if you're trying to pitch this, definitely a more concise version might potentially be good. I mean, it really depends on like who you're pitching to. But I think it was pretty easy to follow. The analogies, I think, were, gosh, you really are good at analogies. Because it was funny, like while you were talking about the marionette, I was like, oh yeah, like you would tie whatever eyes, like strings for the eyes would be tied together, but if you needed to move one individually, you could. I was like, oh, that makes tons of sense. So I think the analogies are really good at helping to clarify and break down better. Also, I think in terms of memory, it's explaining things in the same thing multiple ways, which I think is actually really helpful, which is also why I think this is really good for retaining a lot of that information, even though it is a little bit like up there if you're for like taking your first dive at this. it also helps me explain my brain, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. Like I completely agree with you. Like some parts were a bit especially in early on, because if you don't have context for how the brain works, it becomes hard to associate with that. Like like for me, like I understood the gist of what you were saying, but I because I don't know like the different parts of the brain and what they're called, it's harder for me to remember. But if I consolidated that into like, or if you did it based on how we remember, and then simplified that explanation, and then you can link it to how we like the natural language. So if you could go up a bit, could you go up? Okay. The, okay. This was yeah, this one. Stop. If you go down a little, like okay. This was really interesting to me because you illustrated how we build memories, and then if you go down again, like with sensory input, and how we use sensory input to build words. And once I understood the words part, it was way easier to understand like how we build associations based on words, like how we understand words, and then it related to the system. That made complete sense. Um, it's you have all the content. It's just I think it's the removal of certain things, or just to simplify it a lot more would help a lot. Especially this episodic stuff. I think this is super important for if the question will come up of how do you build strong associations, and especially from a user's point of view, this is very fundamental. I think this was super useful. And if you go down a little bit more, this was yeah, this so kind of I did a mental map of it of this almost like when you were saying it, like you have one word and then we learn that word by through association of senses, and then from that association we've linked to other words and similar that are similar to it, sort of like similes. And uh, this made sense of how we build a memory model, which I think can be related to the final thing that you showed us.
The knowledge graph.
Yeah, I think it can be done in like a minute explanation if we really refine it. And just as a practice, I also wrote down maybe we should have each one of us should have goes at trying to explain this in as like simple a manner as possible to everyone, and
I
just
like that.
give each other feedback about what worked and what didn't work, because I think that would help.
Oh gosh, that sounds terrifying.
I like that. And that's especially why I like that.
Yes, I think that's a good point.
And an idea for that is AD, ADT. I forgot. There's this website I will share with you guys where you can reach out to design mentors and pitch them your design. But we can use the same platform to pitch Sidebrain to see if it's explainable, because they're from as a designer's perspective, they'll look at simplicity and if it makes sense. And it also ties into how we can get pitch it so that users and investors see the aha moment very quickly.
Yeah, we have access to some really good designers, by the way. So we can find some really smart people who've like done really cool things and like pitch to them. But I do really like that idea. So this is still a work in progress. So think of this as, and first off, like, thank you for the feedback. Love it. Like, that's really helpful for me. What I am doing with this, in a sense, is I am creating like all the possible things that I can throw in, I'm throwing in, and then I'll go in and select the pieces that most economically tell the story.
Uh,
Yes, Deep.
Something I was thinking was also, I think at the beginning there's a lot kind of you take in at once, and as you go, you start making those associations to. Oh, hang on. As you start going through the presentation, like my brain starts making the associations from that first point down to these other ones. I would almost recommend maybe restructuring a little bit and maybe talking about points so they correlate a little bit easier. I definitely could feel my brain working to like pull information and like from later and trying to remember it now. So I think that might also help with still being able to explain a lot while being a little bit more concise and effective, I think, or efficient, I guess, with information.
Got it. Love it. Yeah. Okay, cool. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, like I straight like threw you like this.
It's like I'm in biology again, or I'm in psychology again. That was
combination. Okay.
I really like the analogy for the digestive system. Like I was trying to create something like that when I was going through the notes. That makes so much sense. Like if we can actually fit the whole product into these stages, and which is so cool.
Yeah. And then you can actually take it even further, like as I was writing. So I'm writing this in a long form note as well, which I'll share with you. But like there's a difference between farm to table food and like a McDonald's food. So McDonald's food is kind of like, Daily Mail, that kind of stuff. Whereas like farm to table food, or like when you grow your own food, that is you creating your own food. So it is a lot more enriching, but it takes more effort. And then there's the whole middle ground where people pay for like really good quality food. So like really good subscriptions and like articles and content that they have like a really high resonance with. So yeah.
I really like those additions. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
A thought just came into my mind. Oh shit, 1 second.
Computer, don't die. I hate when that happens. Especially with my Mac, because like the battery only lasts maybe an hour. I remember
Oh, it's a really old Mac, right?
Yeah, mine's from 2012. So, oh dang, we lost it. Oh, I guess his computer died.
Yes, it did. Come here.
Give me like 5-second warnings.
That's so messed up. It only gives you 5 minutes.
The 7-second memory thing is not healthy.
Well,
you need that like 30-second window.
Okay.
Well, let me take you off. Take this off
It's a good thing you guys are in the same office.
Yeah. Now I need a Mac. This is annoying. Okay. In the indigestion, all this makes sense for the products, but I think we should also. It'd be really useful to have meta principles that the user needs to embody. For instance, like the Feynman technique, where it's used throughout all the processes here.
Yeah.
And seeing what we need to teach a user would be super useful to plan out how we're going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like a diet.
It's really like it's a change in like a diet. Wait, what?
Yeah. It's
yeah. It's a change in lifestyle.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it is. So that's all I was.
Yeah, this analogy is like really going far, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's like you're dieting, or like you're removing the fast food process of like consuming information, consuming anything, and moving into that farm to table, or at least cooking your own food direction.
Yeah. And like short of cooking your own food, there's like really high quality content that you may have to even pay a little extra for. So it's the richer people who have access to it first, which is kind of how anyway works.
The natural order. And I just realized you could also go into the science with this analogy actually. Of digestion? Yeah. I'm writing. Sorry. Yeah, you were saying that.
Yeah, like I will share like the thing that I've been writing. I love both of your feedback.
Yeah.
Oh, I love your idea of like you both like having to like explain all of this.
It's good, but I hate presenting.
I love it exactly for that reason.
Like it's
Magic happens outside your comfort zone, D.
I know. If Zendra taught me anything, I know that. It's just
okay, if you really want to push the comfort zone thing, try explaining it to my dad. And then if you can get through to him, then we've achieved
Challenge
it.
accepted. Like if I'm not able to explain it to like a 5-year-old, then I don't understand it.
True.
I feel like we could just put family members in front of you and you can use that as like a trial period.
Yes, actually, yes. Let me first get it to a point where both of you understand it well. And then, because like even I'm like thinking through this and like adding flesh to this as we go along, right? But you know what? That's actually a fantastic idea.
You should also
So like both of your parents will also know, okay, what the hell does my daughter and son do?
yeah, you should also explain it in different languages.
Ooh, language is going to be hard.
That's gonna be hard. Like
because
if you try to explain it to my mom, she won't understand anything in Telugu. So here we go.
Ooh,
I only got to explain it in one language. So
yeah, like
Wait, just trying to think. I don't know how to explain it to my mom. I don't know how to explain what
translation
I do to
is
my mom.
really difficult because like it's honestly, by the way, like translation and language are like very interesting in the brain also. It's not that the words are located right next to each other. They're actually located in different places, but the associations are then like held together.
question.
Yes.
I know English is not your first language, Anudeep. Is it your first language, Krishna?
No, I speak Telugu first.
But like
Okay.
honestly, like for all intents and purposes, English is our first
Yeah,
language because that's the
pretty much.
language I'm most comfortable in.
Yeah, same.
Gotcha. Because I was like, I have friends who speak other languages like Mandarin or something, and I asked them once, I'm like, when you do math or when you know communicate in English, do you have to translate in your head first, or does it just like come out? And so for certain things that they do have to like, it is a translation thing in their head. It's like when they count, they actually count in their head in their first language, and then they have to translate it into English in order to do it in English.
Interesting.
So I was just curious with you guys, like if that was similar, because I only speak English.
So with me, I've actually thought about this a little bit. So with me, I actually need to translate from English to Telugu when I'm trying to communicate complex thoughts. But when I am expressing strong emotions, they come out in Telugu.
Oh,
Like, you know, like expletives, or like if I like put my hand in like a bucket of water and it's like really, really, or like I'm taking a bath and it's like really cold water, you know, like, yeah, something like that. So like those words come out in Telugu. So like it's like it's honestly like the emotional system developed first and then the more complex neocortex and the prefrontal cortex developed. So like the older one, that's where like the more primitive language for you in your learning.
Maybe you could shed some light into this, but I always find the person I am in English is quite different from the person I am in Telugu.
Yes.
It's almost, I don't understand how the brain can almost like switch like personalities, like when because the language is also culture, and it's really a feel for things. Like in German, everything's way more accurate.
Yes.
So they have a word for everything. And if you speak German, that's why Germans are also great designers, because it's so precise. But they find it a lot. But like I wonder how it's like to think like that, you know, like in Telugu it's very much like an emotional language, so it's called Italian of the Asia, east.
Ooh.
So it's very emotional even when you speak, but in English it's way more liberal, and the broadness of ideas is quite different. I don't understand how we do that.
So there is like theories out there. See, like I'm going to preface everything, but we understand so little of our brain. It's just funny, like how we think just artificial intelligence is going to take over the world, and we understand so little. But personality and language are linked, because language is is a whole brain activity. What I mean by that is, let's say I give you a word, incline, for example. You are very quick. See, like, look at that expression. Like, you're very quickly able to tell that this word does not exist in the language. So you've basically run through the.
Wait, is that an actual word?
It's not. It's not.
Okay. I just
Yes.
wondering.
But your expression was spot on.
Okay.
Like I was remember, what is this? Okay. What just happened when we did that?
You literally ran through. So, like, one theory says that you run through the entire language. So every part of the brain is connected to every part of the brain. So you literally ran through the entire language and you realize, oh, this is not there. Another theory is because things are, like, as we were talking about, things are stored proximally. So you go to the area where the words are located, and then you, like, quickly do a scan of that area, and you're like, oh wait, no, there's no such thing as an incline. And then a third level is language is in itself interconnected. Like, there's, like, very subtle rules about language, like certain sounds, like, if I say, like, a Chinese sounding word in English, like, it's very apparent that it's not a part of that language.
Yeah.
Because there are intonations and all of that. So when you learn language as a whole, at, like, a super level, like, you associate, like, the rules about that language, and you very quickly run through those rules and realize, okay, this is not there. But the idea is that personality is based on language, not completely, but it has an influence.
Yeah, definitely.
So, like, I don't know whether you've noticed this, but, like, as you grow up and you, like, command over the language and over the words improves, your personality kind of commensurately grows with it. Like, you become a little more confident in who you are because you're able to explain yourself more clearly and without confusion, like, just even internal confusion.
Interesting how the words you choose also then change with your personality.
Yeah, especially with our perceptions of the world. Like we talked about this in terms of therapy. Like if we change the perceptions of certain words or certain happenings and change the language in our brain, we can really change the emotion as well.
Yeah. So what we were talking yesterday, D, is, like, in therapy, one of the things that helped me incredibly is learning new words for emotions. So being an Indian male, this is quite common in our culture. Like, there's, like, 4 variations of emotions we feel: happy, angry, sad, tired. Like, that's it. Everything else is, like, subsumed by the 4 emotions.
Oh my gosh.
It's
so true. If you ever come here, like,
oh my goodness, how interesting.
I'll just take you on one of my dates.
Yes.
Like, you'll understand it's not just men.
No, so my dad is first generation Chinese American. And I was like, it's funny when you said that, I'm like, he does the same thing.
Yes.
Like, he only has 4 emotions. And typically anything that even if it's stress, it translates into one of those 4 language or one of those 4 emotions.
Yes.
Wow.
And one of the strongest things that I did to therapy was, like, learn new words for emotions. And I felt like when I learn a new word, like, really learn what that word means, it's not that I'm feeling a new emotion. I've always been feeling it. I can just, like, differentiate it from the rest. So
for example, like angry versus frustrated versus upset.
Yes.
Versus pissed.
Yes.
Versus
jealous. Yes. All of them are very separate feelings. You've just, like, subsumed all of them into one category.
Yeah.
So language is, in a sense, what our conscious part of the brain can access. And the more you increase your vocabulary of language, not just vocabulary as in, like, I know the word, but, like, I understand the word, you are able to bring more of what is subconscious into conscious. Because if you don't do that, then your subconscious will run you and you won't even know. So what was the point I was trying to make? I forgot.
I'm trying to remember it for you. So what am I
we were talking originally about explaining things to parents. And then I asked about how if you guys translate from, I'm sorry, I forgot what your
Yes.
native languages are into
Yeah.
English.
Telugu.
Yeah.
What's
Telugu.
you speak a bunch. Which is your like native, as in your parents?
My parents speak Telugu, but like after English, the language that I'm most comfortable with is Hindi.
Okay.
But yeah, so when you're translating, you're essentially, the words are not stored in the same places, but they're stored in like kind of different places. And the combination of those words is then stored in an association, and then like you match the association to the word.
I got it. So it has to be based on like a database, like similar to how
it's super interesting. So like
it's akin to machine learning.
It
as
is.
you said in your article.
Yeah, it's very similar. So it's kind of interesting how babies are able to pick up languages so much faster than older people are. Like, so for example, if I am to learn and sit down and learn Chinese, I'm going to find it incredibly hard. But if as a baby I was exposed to Chinese, it would be a lot easier for me. And the reason is, when you're growing up, think of it as your brain is inserting phonemes into its system.
Phonemes?
Phonemes are like the basic sounds of anything.
Okay, yeah.
So sounds, sa, u, nd.
Okay.
So like I don't know exactly how to break it up, but like sa, a, u, m, d, b.
Okay.
So all of these are like phonemes.
Okay.
English phonemes are fairly simple.
Yeah.
Chinese phonemes are a lot harder. There's like a few words where they literally sound the fucking exact same, but the intonation is different. But because you don't have a sense of intonation, you don't hear the variation in the intonation, and you feel like this person is saying the same word like 15 times, but it means an entire story.
Yes, the word for mother and the word for horse are the same word, but depending on the tone you say it in, means completely something different. So you could be calling your mother a horse.
Like I'd be
like a mother and a horse. Like look at how far away they are.
But and then it is also the same word for grandparent, but it's a specific grandparent. So maternal or paternal side.
Oh.
It is your paternal, no. It is your maternal mother if you are a son, specifically. So I will call if I have kids, my kids will call my parents gong gong and po po. But my younger brother, when he has kids, will have to call them there's different ways you can say it, but there's like when is mama, and then yeah, so it's a whole like
crazy.
Yeah.
We have different names for everything. Until you become a great grandparent.
We have that for grandmom. We don't have that for grandfather. So
Yeah.
Nana, mama,
yeah.
but tateya.
Tateya.
Oh.
Yeah.
In Japanese, because my husband's Japanese, they don't have any differentiators. Grandma and grandpa are the same on regardless of which side.
That's weird to me. That's so strange. Hey, I just had another question. Is it right for us to look at the brain as in like different parts have different responsibilities almost? Because
which one?
The brain, we segment it based on like how systems work almost. Like this part is in charge of this part inside of that. But there was this really weird study that I remember where half the brain had to be removed, and the other part of the brain just took over.
Yeah.
So, but in this case, like in skill development, as the analogy suggested, if you remove certain parts of the brain, can the other parts take over?
Yes.
Completely.
Completely, in the sense you can function like an average human being. You can't be above average.
Okay.
So it's incredible how the human brain like just makes up for things. So what they say about mental, not disease, but like mental injury, like injuries to the brain, is if it happens, I wish it happens when you were a baby or not at all. Because if it happens when you're a baby, because of just amount of neuroplasticity, like the brain recompensates. So like you can almost function at like an average level of an average human being, even if like an entire lobe is removed. But if that happens later in life, because you've lost neuroplasticity, it's incredibly hard.
Okay.
Certain parts of it may come back, but it's just not ever going to be the same.
But I'm so interested, like, how do lifelong learners build connections once then, like, this is very helpful.
So you're using the same neurons. You're not creating new neurons. You're just connecting them together.
Okay.
That process happens well into your life. There's this central area in your brain called the hippocampus, which is associated with memory.
Okay.
So,
And
well,
what's that thing that happens when you're 25 where you lose neuroplasticity or something? I forgot.
yeah, so like a lot of people wish for neuroplasticity, but what neuroplasticity is it's great when there's nothing in your brain.
Okay.
When there is something in your brain, neuroplasticity means the brain is just very susceptible to the outside world. And that means you will forget the things that you know to make place for new stuff. So neuroplasticity after a certain age is actually harmful for you. But as a baby, it's incredible because it's just empty, right? So growing up, when you're born, every neuron is connected to every neuron almost.
Okay.
So part of growing up is the brain figuring out which connections to keep and which connections to remove.
Okay.
So that's why it's super interesting. So like with language, as we were talking about, if you're exposed to Chinese and like very different languages also at a very young age, that means below the age of 1 year or 6 months, your brain primes itself for those languages. So in a sense, like when you're born, your brain is ready for anything and everything. But after the age of 1, it kind of commits. So learning multiple languages at a young age means that you're inserting the very phonemes for those languages into your central memory. And then when you're speaking words, you're basically stringing together those phonemes into words. But when you learn a language later in life, you're not able to insert new phonemes. So you're using the same existing phonemes, and then you're trying to string them up to sound like that word. That's why you have an accent.
Ah. This is why I wish my dad spoke Chinese to me when I was a kid. It made learning Chinese very difficult. I eventually couldn't really do it.
Yes, yes. And Chinese is like a really difficult language even by itself. Like just it's the intonations. Like if you're used to a language that has intonations, you can actually pick it up a little easier. But like you and me, like we just don't have any experience with languages with intonations. So when you hear that, you're almost not even able to tell that these 3 words are like different intonations.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, language is it just
That's
like
a trip.
it's insane. So like what happens up till the age of 25 is your brain is still figuring out what connections to keep, what to remove. But past the age of 25, your brain is essentially like figured out all of the things to keep, like the structures to keep.
Okay.
But the connections between neurons, they can keep changing. So learning, by the way, is so when 2 neurons are connected to each other, they're basically communicating with each other through an electric impulse. Okay. Now, creativity is when you connect 2 ideas that are so far away that there was no connection between them, but you connect them up into like, you see a connection between both of them. And the way the brain like reinforces this connection is through something called a myelin sheath. So what a myelin sheath is, it's a fatty covering on the
brain,
on the
the neuron.
axon.
Neuron.
Yeah, on the axon. And when that is covered, axon is like when the thing that connects to 2 neurons.
Okay.
So when it is covered up like that, it allows the electric current to travel faster.
Oh.
So that's an insight.
Yeah, we talked about this briefly yesterday.
Yeah. So a myelin sheathed, and you can have multiple sheets of myelin. So like things that you do very frequently, like, for example, moving your hand. Like if you think about it, the number of muscles that are being like controlled to make you move your hand with super fine control is insane, right? So that's because those are complete, and it's almost like you think it and immediately happens. Like there's like very little lag. That's because those connections are like just coated in myelin sheets. So like that connection just happens so much faster.
But how does it know what to connect? Like I really don't understand creativity in the sense.
Repetition.
But what?
I was just about to say, like, typing on a keyboard is like flawless. There's no delay. If anything, it might just accidentally hit a key. But me trying to pick up a guitar again and trying to remember what the chords are takes forever.
Yes.
Like, it takes sitting there practicing, like my hands fidgets around trying to figure out things.
For long periods of time, right?
Okay.
Yes, and I haven't picked up a guitar in like 3 years. So it's that level of repetition. I get that. Like, it's the level of repetition. The more frequent you do something, the better it sticks. The less frequent you do something, it just gets replaced with something else that is important, that your brain is considering important.
Yeah.
Like the skill development thing I talked about.
Even with creativity, like you may look at somebody who's been creative and be like, oh my God, that leap that this person took to connect these two things is insane.
Mhm.
But in that person's brain, they've been making that connection for a really long time.
Okay.
Maybe initially subconsciously, then consciously, and then they decide to write about it or draw it or something like that. And then you're like, wow, that is insane. But in their brain, they're just taking one step forward.
That makes sense. Like when I was giving you feedback, I was looking back at the experience I had with Sweatcoin and pitching to people and how I would have done it and how I improved and how I've done people to do it. So it is that memory system that helps connect without even us knowing it. That means okay, this makes sense, and also in the tree of knowledge thing that we talked about, where if you just do it more frequently, you will just become better at it regardless. So if you just keep asking why, you will just get a better understanding of the world.
Yes.
And if you keep practicing memory techniques, you'll just keep getting better at it.
Because your brain just falls into a natural pattern of doing it again and again. And logic, it's quite interesting. Logic, which philosophers love to think about, is basically a deconstruction of how your brain is doing associations by itself. So it's like bringing into conscious how the brain does it automatically. So when you see two things that look kind of similar, you are associating them together without even knowing. So for example, if you drop your phone into a small glass of water and then it drops to the bottom, like you don't need to again then drop it into the sea and then at the lake to realize that the same thing happens. That's because your brain is logically connecting all of those things together into like one cohesive thing. You only need to do it once. Logic, our study of logic, is essentially the study of how a valid association is made in the brain, and then use that more generally as a way of studying, thinking, science.
So meta.
Yeah.
As philosophy is. Fascinating. This was fun.
Yeah. So I'm going to like spend a little bit more time like putting more in place here. But Dee, like you are working with him, like I've given him a few things to kind of read up on and like work through. And then we'll also connect. What I was thinking was we have our usual time on Tuesdays and Thursdays, right? So what I was thinking was let's keep our time and then meet for us individually. And then right after that, like make it a team meeting and bring Krishna in as well.
Cool.
Okay.
And we also talked about an idea yesterday where we have a monitor that's directly connected to her room. If you want to reach her, and like
I love that. I'll get a monitor. I really like that. I like that.
I love how like he's like, done. It's just, yes, it's happening. Because I was like, I was telling him, I was like, I don't mind just being like on Zoom. If I'm working, I mean, I'm working. So
I like that.
Yeah.
I will get a monitor.
Very easy to have conversations like this.
Yeah. Anudeep, I do have something for you, but I guess it doesn't matter. Like both of you. So my contracting job is the end of my contracting job is October 15th. Are you okay if I just, because I have to give 15 days notice, and at that point it's still another 15, like I'm only losing 15 days. Is it okay if I just hold out until then and then full-time move over?
October 15th?
Mm-hmm.
That's another month.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
like
is that okay? Or yeah, no, I'm still definitely like doing what I'm doing now, but I can guarantee you my full brain, I guess.
Okay.
On the I guess what is like the 16th or something. Is that okay, or do you need me to go?
Yeah, that's fine. You're also going to be moving houses and all of that, right?
Yes.
So like use this time to like do all of that, and then
Okay.
we'll still be meeting like on
Yeah.
times, and then you'll be working with Krishna and all of that.
Mhm.
But you will fully get in October 15th onwards.
Yes, you will have my full and undivided attention at that point. I
Okay.
already stopped one of my other jobs, and then I was trying to figure out when this one was going to end. I was like, oh, okay, a month. I think I can handle a month. So, okay, cool. Oh, and then something else. I think it'd be good because I don't know how much of this you have, but if you have any information on not necessarily product features, but user flows or
Mhm.
anything like that. I don't know if you have, if you don't mind,
That's
if you
I'm
would
going
take
to
some
add.
time.
Yeah, I'm going to
Okay,
add to this.
cool. Then I think that's it on my side.
One of
Cool. I will also share my card, the US card with you. Um,
Hey,
yeah, use it for whatever things you need to buy there.
we'll do, we'll do. Okay,
Oh, also tell me your new address when you get it. I will get my
Mhm.
official communication sent over to you.
Sweet, we'll do.
Okay.
And then, oh, sorry, I do actually have one more. Deadlines for plugin and app,
Yeah, let me.
because we have never had one, which is bad. So
Yeah, yeah. Let me think through that. I will keep
yeah,
adding to this, and those are like things that I want to add.
cool. Yeah, because Krishna asked me earlier today, and I was like, I actually have no idea when our deadlines are because we've
Yeah,
never talked about it. So okay,
but as
that's
like
good.
just a quick thing, like the plugin looks like an engineer designed it right now.
Yeah, I'm getting to that. I think one of the big things we had talked about last week was trying to refine, like finalize what was actually getting put into the plugin versus trying to shove everything in there.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to optimize for specific features rather than try to just
Okay.
put the app into plugin form.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay. Cool. But
it's more
like,
like optimizing and
yeah,
trying to refine.
yeah, but take decisions there. Like we can talk through them if like things are
Yeah.
really clarification. But feel free to take executive decisions there.
Mhm.
I'm going to introduce him to Mayank too today, and
Sweet.
I had him working on infrastructure stuff, which is if a new engineer joins, like for them to be able to do like to program in collaboration. So you need kind of
Cool.
those processes there. So now that he's done with that, he can start working on the plugin again on certain features. So like let's start like polishing up some of the interface there and then translating that over to Zeppelin or something like that so that
Mhm.
he can
Yeah.
pick it up.
Okay. And then did someone new join Slack?
Yeah, that guy is a CA. The CA in India. I
Okay.
wanted to make him like a single channel guest, but then you need to be on a higher tier for that. I'll get us off all on a higher tier. Once we hit the limits of this tier, I will
Okay.
all of us there.
Because I was like, did we just hire someone new? And I had zero idea that was happening.
Oh, no, we did not.
Gotcha.
And another thing, I think this initial beta. Yeah, okay. Let me properly think about this. Like, we'll set a
Okay.
date to like open this up to like a few people for a beta, and then I think Discord would be a good place to source feedback and like create channels for the community about like what features they like, what they don't like, just like interacting with final users.
Okay.
Or do you think Slack will be better?
Slack is more central for us.
Yeah, so so the reason I was thinking thought was we could do it Slack too. I don't have like a bone in this game, but like Slack is what we use internally to communicate with each other and like about the product
I see. I see.
and this is like a slight
Yeah.
separate this thing.
Okay. I'm fine either way. If you want to keep it separate, that's totally fine. I believe we all have Discord, so that
Yes.
works. So if you want to keep things separate, totally down for that. If you'd rather merge in, that's fine too.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'll start working earlier, figured out a way to wake up earlier.
It's
Um,
okay. Like, don't feel obligated to, like, if it's like a couple hours in the morning for you and then like we'll figure it out. We'll eventually figure out what our workflows naturally work, like what works best for us all. So
Yeah, before 9:30 a.m., she's self-professed being a zombie.
he has seen me in all hands and I'm just like, he's like, okay, just like, how does that work for you, Deanna? I'm like, give me 10 minutes. Like, give me 10 minutes to respond to you. Keep moving on. I will respond to, I need 10 minutes. Realistically, that's before 9. I can do 9. 9, I can mentally be awake for. Anything before 9, though, don't expect much. If you're okay with me just sitting there, we're good with that.
Oh, she'll physically be present, but like
I remember our
she'll be
interview.
running like 20 minutes behind.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I remember our interview. It was like, yeah, it was that. She was just so tired. I'm like, I shouldn't have done this so early.
She was telling me, she was like, she asked you a question and then she was like, wait.
Why did I answer? Like, ask? That was so dumb. Yeah, it's okay. Like, I have been, because I haven't had needed to get up in the morning, I've been getting up at like 10. Because that's like what works for me. But I don't mind getting to a rhythm of waking up earlier. That's actually probably better for me. So
So you
whatever, like
sleep
we'll figure
early,
this out as we go.
you can sleep early too, or you just sleep
No,
late?
I naturally am a late night sleeper. If anything, I'll sleep and I'll wake up. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, for 2 years in college, I was getting averaging about 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night. So anything around 6 is actually pretty
We went to design
interesting.
school and kind of brutal her experiences there that she was telling me about it. Like,
Oh yeah, it was great.
What?
We were constantly living in a state of fear. So for our school, the minimum graduating class originally was 15, like 15 students. And so our program, when they accepted students, they accepted 20 of us. They're like, oh, we've got 5 wiggle room in case for some reason we don't cut out to be, or we drop it, or whatever. When we get in there, the semester we started, they changed the policy to 20 students. So none of us could get dropped, none of us could fail out, none of us could leave the program without jeopardizing everybody else's careers.
Get it. This is a hardcore
So
accountability system.
yeah. So we were, I mean, it helped us all get really close together and like actually really help each other. We didn't see each other as competition, which is really nice. And so we were constantly trying to help each other stay at least above floating water, like floating level, like just barely stay, like just don't be like past this line and we'll all be fine. Um, then we had a student in the class plagiarize sponsored work,
oh,
which was
I remember this.
which was basically along the lines of expulsion, but then that would leave us down with 29 and we'd all get dropped. Thankfully, a student from the year before had taken a semester off and he joined our class. He is also the student, the person that I told you not to hire. If you ever don't hire him, I don't like him.
Okay.
He interviews really well, but he's really lazy. Not lazy, but like forgetful. He prioritizes other things in his life and basically doesn't show up to work. But throughout the 2 years that we were in this program, a lot of us were averaging 3 to 4 hours of sleep. And then at the end of our program, we had a senior show. It's to showcase all of our work and do present our theses.
Uh-huh. Thesis.
Thesis, is it
Thesis
plural
and
and singular?
thesis and theses.
Ah, yeah.
Oh, theses. This is how great my English is, and it is my first language. Theses. And so our show was like a Monday through Saturday. We were presenting our theses on, I think, Friday. And so my job was exhibition leader. So my job was to get everyone's projects together, put it all get it all up, make sure it's all fine, everything's running well. We were setting up things properly with enough space. Everyone has their own panels. And so the week leading up to it, I basically pulled a 5-day all-nighter. with
Wow.
about 30 minutes worth of sleep in the midst of that.
What?
Nope, like for a while, nobody was helping me. And then I called our class president. I was like, she was typically there with me, and I was like, literally no one's here, but I need so much help. And she like blasted everybody and was like, you get your ass here now. Or like, so everyone finally came and helped, and it was fine. And then I passed out for
2 days.
no, it was actually only a day, but it was less than 20 hours, or I think less than 20 hours, but basically fell asleep at like 3 p.m. when like the day our exhibition opened. And I woke up, I think, at 9 a.m. the next day.
You must have felt incredible though.
No, I felt horrible. I felt like shit. Like, and it took like a couple days to recover from that too. But yes, so I think I've figured out I would ideally like 7 to 8 hours of sleep, but I can do 6 and be totally fine and functional. So if I go to sleep at even 2, I could probably do at least 8, like around 8:30 and wake up, and would probably be good to go. Zombie-ish, but
30 minutes, 5 nights.
Yeah, the older self, your older self is not going to forgive you. Like,
no. Yeah, no, my older self is gonna be like, what the hell did you do to me?
you know the seal tape goes through that.
Yeah, but it's actually purposefully done, because when you go through those kinds of things,
Yeah.
your real personality comes through. So like there's a lot of people who hold on because they're like programmed and conditioned by their parents and all of the external things. But the only people who can truly make it out of a SEAL team and make it out successfully are people who are internally motivated. So to bring out these people who are internally motivated, they like kill all of your external motivation by doing things like this.
I believe it. Yes,
Might
I
be
felt so accomplished afterwards.
Yeah,
Yes.
I
But
believe.
then also realized how much my life is now partially motivated by fear. It's not necessarily fear of failing myself, it's fear of failing others. So I don't need to be a perfectionist, but if I told you I was going to do something, I will do it, because if I don't, I have failed you in a way that I feel like I could have done better. So definitely not like anal perfectionist, because there are some points where I'm like, I don't care. It's done, and it's done well, but it's not amazing, but it's done well. But my fear is disappointing somebody who either had faith in me, was depending on me, or yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah, I've seen this play out. Like even with people that she particularly doesn't like, she has to get it done.
I do.
May not be highest quality, but like she has to get it done.
Yeah, I will kick myself over it if I could, because basically I'm like, I should know myself by this point in my life well enough where if I think I can do it in a timely manner where I'm not like kicking myself or like stressing out over it completely, then I should be able to do it. Otherwise, I need to either early enough in advance say I need more time, or say I don't want to do it, or I can't do it. So I have learned the hard way, because I have committed to things at Zen Drive that I should not have committed to. And thankfully I had very kind people I was working with at the time who were very forgiving.
She's not talking about me.
Yeah.
No, you were an asshole.
You know?
No, if anything, I felt like I was the asshole to you.
Like when you guys, when we talk in one-on-ones, like with either one of you, like you guys are so nice. When you guys meet, it's just like, what? I mean, that's also good banter. So that makes sense.
Yeah, we like pull each other's legs quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to have this running joke where we were super like sassy and sarcastic with each other, where my boss was like, what is this relationship going on here? And we figured out it's like a sibling relationship. Even though Anudeep is older, I am the older sister and he is the younger brother, because of the amount of like leveling that we do.
Is on point, dude. Like she's not like letting it go right now because of like she wants to show
I'm
respect.
trying to,
Yeah, like because like other people and all of that, but like when she lets her sass go, like it goes.
I have told Anudeep I will mellow it out when like it's not just the two of us because he is the boss and I want to give like the respect that he does have all of my respect, but like the respect in like perspective or in perceived respect that I have for him be equal to the actual amount of respect that I have for him. But when it's just the two of us, that goes out the window. There is no perceived respect.
But it's good. It's like great sass. Like it kind of keeps your wits sharpened.
Actually, yeah, I also noticed that when someone else is really sassy or really good at insulting you, your level slowly goes up because you have to compete. Like
it's
otherwise,
not mean.
you lose.
She's not mean. She doesn't say things
Yeah,
that will
yeah.
hurt you, but like
Just for
she
fun.
just packages it so well. You're like, wait, what?
I want to hear this now.
It's gonna take time. I'm not comfortable yet.
Okay, good.
We're getting there. But I feel like I don't know, like through in it, like even the interview and stuff like that, I was like, I don't want to like be perceived as someone who's like very serious because that's not my personality at all. Like I'm a big weirdo, big joker, very like I'm relatively chill. But I was like really intimidated when like people were interviewing and they'd be like, hello, like welcome to our interview. Thank you for having, and like they were just super serious. I'm like, oh my gosh, who am I gonna work with? Who are you?
Yeah.
So I was like, this is kind of what you get. You might get more sass later, but that's about this is about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sweet.
Yeah. Good night.
Good night. Or no, have a good day.
Okay.
It's around lunchtime actually for you guys. Have potentially good lunch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, actually it is. Lunchtime.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm keeping track of the time.
We'll get the monitor idea is really good, D. We'll get that.
Yeah, I was
Do you
like, that's a
also
really cool
want
idea.
one? Do you
No, I
also-
mean, it's just my computer.
do you have two monitors or one?
Cool, I have your other one.
So you have two, right?
Yeah, so I have the one you gave me, and I actually had the one I originally had, which in college, which is like this tiny little thing.
Uh-huh.
I'm good. I'm set.
We need to get him also a monitor because like he's designing
Yeah.
a fucking Windows laptop, first of
Oh
all.
my
Actually,
gosh. Get him a laptop.
No,
actually, I kind of prefer that. I'm so used to it. I don't even use a mouse. Like I just use.
how are we going to take him to Silicon Valley?
See, I told him that earlier today, or I guess earlier my day, yesterday for you guys. But I was like, oh yeah, like I know you're planning to come out here. I was like, so Krishna, you should also come out this way.
Be alone in an empty office, staring at the walls.
Nice
Just get
wall.
him a monitor.
Yeah, well, I'm going to get him a monitor.
Yeah, get him a laptop too. That won't die on him after 5 seconds of telling him his battery's gonna die.
So annoying.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? Like,
I have
look
my-
for a few monitors. Get good ones. You're a designer. You like color reproduction and all
Hey,
of that.
get him the one that you have or you got.
My monitor is not great. The one that I gave
No,
you.
no. Yeah, the one that you're letting me borrow.
L1, right? Okay.
Yeah, that's the one Jonas swears by. So,
Yeah.
or talk to Jonas.
One of those monitors, like once you use it, there's no going back.
Okay.
Seriously. Although I still can't figure out the color correction on this. I might I'm wondering if I want to take it in somewhere and
Get
get
it
it color corrected.
Yeah.
Yeah, I cannot for the life of me figure it out. I spent like a good 4 hours one day trying to color correct it. I don't know.
Okay. I will get so I'll get this monitor as well.
One other thing.
Yeah.
Remembered. Like if we need like early user interviews, in Design Lab we have access to like a 10,000 designers where they share resources or anything. So if you have like a specific design problem or a tool you need for someone to reach, I can just post on the Slack channel that we have. So
That's a great resource to like have. Yeah.
Krishna, do you use a mouse? You don't use a mouse at all. Are you open to learning or to using a mouse?
Yeah, I'll buy one.
Okay. My husband got me this. It is
Logitech
so
one.
yes, it is a Logitech, but what I like about it is it has more buttons and stuff on the side. So I actually use it for zooming. So instead of like pinching or having to hold down extra keys, you can just side swipe on this.
Have you seen the MX Ergo? It's like a
The
tracker,
MX.
and that just looks like really nice. I'll show you
Okay.
eventually.
I
also-
am using an MX Master at the moment, but I was just saying, I was like, you don't have to just get the normal like magic
Like, get a good
mouse.
mouse. Like you're
Yeah,
designing,
get a-
you're going to be using these kinds of like things so constantly that even a small improvement like actually like
Mhm.
adds up.
Okay. And
Also get yourself an external keyboard, so or like a Bluetooth keyboard, so that way you don't have to like have your desktop right in front of you and then a monitor up on the side. Like do whatever you need to do to get yourself like
A good,
situated.
yeah, I agree.
I also bought my Mac. So
You have a Mac?
I have a Mac. My mom broke it when she picked it up and dropped it. And you have no. I was in the middle of my course
Oh my gosh.
last week, and then she dropped it. I was like, what the fuck am I gonna do now? Like, I need to submit everything. In a
Wait,
week.
is she like, is it going to get repaired or is it gone?
It's like 40K to repair it, and I just don't have the cash for that yet.
Okay.
Wait, is it not under warranty?
No, it's like 2 years old. It's
Oh,
it's like the MacBook Pro, but the older version.
You will also need a new laptop, right, D, at some point?
yes, eventually. Right now, I like mine's still running good for the
Okay.
most part. Once I start seeing it crashing or like overheating a lot more, then I'll switch into a new one. Because my baby's old.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Cool. See you guys
Yeah.
tomorrow, my time. Your
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, okay.
See you tomorrow.
Bye bye.
Bye.